The Southern Colonies and the Colonial Period, a EDF 203 presentation by Kelly Nolan. The Southern Colonies were also known as the Royal Colonies, and these included the future states known as Maryland, Virginia, the North and South Carolinas, and Georgia. The colonies were known as the Royal Colonies because they had to listen and follow by the King of England's laws. Children in the southern colonies lived on plantations, the rich ones, and experienced lives with and as slaves. The South had a small population which affected many factors of their education. So the primary education in the southern colonies was a lot different than modern day education. For instance, parents were held responsible to teach their children, not teachers. Because of such little population, the schools were not placed in big towns, and families could not get their children to these big towns even if there was a school. So it was the parents that taught their children everything they needed to know. Children who came from wealthy families, like the ones who lived on the plantations or owned a plantation, usually were taught by tutors and had the option of being able to go to college, which was an unrealistic expectation for the kids who was not in this situation, who was poor. The education, the curriculum, was mostly centered around Christianity. Children mostly read the Bible and memorized Bible verses, so they learned to read and do basic math, but it was nothing as advanced as it is today or as it was later on in the centuries. What students are taught was also based upon their gender. Males were taught grammar, math, and other subjects like writing that were thought to be more beneficial for them. Wealthy females were taught music, dancing, French, and mannerism. Both wealthy and poor female children were also taught the essentials of the home work, like sewing, cooking, and raising children. So basically, whether you were wealthy or poor, a female was taught how to be a good wife and how to be a good mother. Children who were poor received an education from their parents, which is very similar also to the wealthy children, although they had the option of hiring tutors, whereas the poor children did not. Poverty-stricken females often did not get education at all, besides learning how to be a good wife, a good mother, the essentials like that, and not the music, dancing, French, or mannerism like the wealthy females did. Men, typically, who were poor, earned apprenticeships working as a laborer on a farm or for a welder or a blacksmith, something like that. They didn't typically learn the stuff that the wealthy males did, however, they did learn hard labor. Orphan children were typically sent to workhouses where they done work, and it was called school. And secondary education was primarily only achievable for wealthy children, however, some poor children could achieve it through certain measures, which we'll talk about. So there's different types of schools that was in the southern colonies. The apprenticeship system, which is what we was talking about earlier with the poor males, is a system in which children learn skills and work under someone to gain a job one day. So basically you're learning a skill set for your future job. You're not necessarily learning about subjects or have a curriculum. It's more about the labor and how to do something. There's charity schools, which was operated by the SPG, and then there was free schools. And this is where some of the poor kids went. It said it was small in number and not really free. It was only free for some poverty-stricken families and not for everyone. Farmers could also build schoolhouses, although there was a fee charged and no real certified teacher, so it wasn't really counted as a school. But because of the large lands, as discussed earlier, it was really hard for children to get to school, which is why all the responsibility of education fell upon the children's parents. Another type of education in school that was available in the southern colonies was the College of William and Mary. This was considered a higher education, and this college was designed to train ministers for the Church of England. However, later on in the 18th century, it began teaching irregular classes and had a set curriculum, not just for future preachers and stuff like that. So the education in the southern colonies and colonial period. The Age of Enlightenment really changed the course of education in the southern colonies and really all of the colonies. More thought came into education with John Locke's influences, so now schools were wanting to teach mathematics, history, geography, science, philosophy, and even other languages. So with this new advancement of humanism and having new views on life and people in general, it really changed education as a whole. So a new thought of man's natural rights came into play with education. So they thought every man had deserved equal rights, that it was given to them at birth, which was really the basis for the Declaration of Independence. As this began, as did the population numbers in the southern colonies. So as this was going on, as things was changing, people were having more and more children, and because of this, a new education system could have been created. So with the rise of population, the education system changed drastically. Schools began to be built in towns because there's more people, so people were able to get to towns to take their children to school. And with the new advancement and influence from John Locke, there was a new set curriculum for elementary schools. There was standards that they wanted their children to learn. And grammar schools refused to change or alter their original curriculum. They wanted to stand by what they've always done because, change is scary for some things. But this caused more private schools to be created that taught things that the grammar schools wouldn't. This new way of education was supported heavily by Benjamin Franklin, who later opened a college in Philadelphia. He wanted to train future teachers for schools in rural areas. He also wanted to train government officials, and he was a big supporter of the progression of education. So during this time, several colleges were also formed and was the basis for the modern education today. So the resources I used was our textbook, Education in the Colonies by Education World, and Education in the Southern Colonies by the University of Notre Dame. Thank you.